Welcome back to page 121. Well, today is part 3 of the Against the Giant series, Hall of the Fire Giant King. The other two were really bad, really nasty. This one's really nasty. These are tough Gary Gygax modules written in the late 70s, and this edition was published together in 81. I've owned this since 1981. It's much loved and battered. Actually, I'm not positive this is my copy. This might have been a buddy's copy. But I've been involved with this since 81. I've owned it since 82 or 83. So today we're going to take a look at Against the Giants, number 3, G3, Hall of the Fire Giant King. And we're going to look at why this one is probably the most dangerous of all 3 so far. And the devious powers behind what the Giants are up to, why they're attacking humanity. Spoilers, I guess. 40-year-old module that everybody knows, but still, I guess I should say it. And I also want to remind you, I am running a Patreon right now to try to support the channel, try to give me opportunities to get better equipment, get a better backdrop. I love this backdrop, but I wouldn't mind changing it up now and again. Just improving the channel in general, keeping my time free so I'm able to make the videos that I make at the volume I make. So if there's anything you can do to help out, that would be greatly appreciated. But enough of the commercial, back to the scheduled terror of today, the Hall of the Fire Giant King. The Against the Giant series is some of my favorite modules that Gary Gygax ever wrote. These were originally tournament modules. Really, it's a challenge to see how well the players can coordinate and work out their attacks rather than just hack and slash dungeon. If you hack and slash these, you lose, and you lose in a big way. Especially this one. Here is there are the various levels to it. I guess I should show the pre-gen characters. I haven't shown them yet. We have Gleep Werp, the Eyebiter, Cloy Busey, the Magsman, Roki Swirkt, he's a human cleric, Frush Osigel, he's a human fighter, Fankin Hadipeak, he's a high elf fighter MU, Feared Trantle, a human cleric, Redmod Dumple, dwarf fighter, Faffel Dweomercraft, human magic user, and Beak Gwenders of Crudel, a half-elf ranger. Not a real fan of any of the names of these guys. I have let some players run them. I insist they change the name. I realize it's part of the old school magic, but I never liked the names on this. This just seemed like a bunch of silliness put on page. But anyway, back to the matter at hand. At the end of the last adventure, the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, the players, if they took the magic rod of teleportation, there's a little teleport pad, if you will, kind of out of Star Trek, they were teleported to just outside the Hall of the Fire Giant King. All of these areas are in mountainous areas, kind of near the Omenry, Sterich. That's where these ended up getting placed. This module doesn't place them in any particular place, but I've played them there. I've played the Steading of the Hill Giant Chief elsewhere. This one, for all the danger of the Frost Giant Jarl's Palace, this one tops it. Where you had ice and slipping and falling on your tuchus and things like that in the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. Here, if you slip and fall, you're probably going to end up in lava. Very dangerous environment, even worse than the cold that we had to deal with, is the hot halls of the Fire Giant King. There would be a lot of soot and ash in the air. There would be heat. There would be all kinds of problems that aren't dealt with in the module because, frankly, D&D had not matured to that point that we had rules to deal with suffering, hyperthermia, heat exhaustion, falling into lava, what the damage would be if you had a Ring of Fire resistance, for instance, something like that. At these levels, a Ring of Fire resistance would be, it's very likely someone in the party has one. So there's no real rules for dealing with that. Again, thank you, Wilderness Survival Guide. And to a lesser degree, thank you, Dungeoneer Survival Guide, specifically for this one. You have some rules in there that'll help you work your way through here. So I do recommend using both those books. And both those books and these modules are available on DriveThruRPG, by the way. Very reasonable. Snur is the Fire Giant Chief. Queen Froopy is his beautiful wife. These guys even have Spellfire cards. It's kind of neat. So we come in, and Snur is much more organized than the other two. He has Itins guarding his front hall. Sneaking around in here is going to be much harder. And as you move, again, as in the first two, there's a secret little cave not too far from here where the players can go and rest up and get their spells back and maybe even experience points depending on the DM. By the way, I always did that. I would allow players to take what's now kind of a long rest, but I would allow them to go up in their experience points. And in the early days, I did the training to suck up some gold. I stopped that very early in my D&D DMing, but I would let them level up and then basically do the training later. It was just easier, especially in a game like this. Your wandering encounters in this one are 2 fire giant guards, 2 fire giantesses with 12 gnoll workers, 4 young fire giants with 1 to 4 young hellhounds, 1 cloud, 1 frost, and 1 stone giant visitor looking around. None of these are easy encounters. This is a very dangerous module, much more dangerous than the first 2. The good news is your players should have learned by now not to just blast in here and start popping off, especially with fireballs, because fireballs are going to be of limited utility in this particular one. I always thought that's why Gygax saved this one until the last of the 3. So we come into the Grand Hall. We've got the Itins guarding things. We've got the beautiful, we've got fire opals in a massive throne room. We've got a beautiful throne. We got King Snur seated on the throne. So all 3 of these have similar scenarios where you can kind of encounter the fire giant chieftain with his minions and take your luck, take your swing there. Hopefully that gets you through it. I don't know if I'd take this shot right away. I would sneak around for a little while first. King Snur is really tough, 92 hit points. He's got a couple of large hellhounds in there with him. He's just a toughie. But he's nothing compared to Queen Froopy. Queen Froopy, I love saying Froopy. Queen Froopy is nasty. She is ugly. She is disgusting. She is mean. She fights as a male storm giant. She's a toughie. She's a veritable harridan, a sly and cunning horror. She is, if anything, uglier than her husband Snur. She's got a huge mass of yellow-orange hair, which looks like a fright wig. Queen Froopy's face is a mass of jowls and wrinkles, set in the middle of a very large head, which sits squarely on her shoulders. Her body is lumpy and gross. Gary really went to describing her in this one. She wears garments of black dragon hide. She fights the normal male fire giant. She's a bonus of +2 to hit and +4 damage. She's tough. By old D&D standards, that's a very tough encounter. Even by stuff with Unearthed Arcana Incorporated, very tough. Again, I have run this in years since I ran this many years ago. I actually ran through this as a player one time. The others I did a couple times. This one I only remember being in here once. Very difficult module to be a player in. Can be a challenge to DM. You don't want to overwhelm the players because, frankly, by this point, they'll get discouraged very quickly. And you don't want to do that. But on the other hand, you can't just let this be a walkthrough for them either. So we get through the halls. We are here in Snur's Grand Palace and things like that. We're coming in through this way. It's standard dungeon crawl, just really, really big dungeon. We get the fire giant guards of the king right there. His private quarters, which is where most of the treasure is. We get a 10-headed pyrohydra lurking there. We have King Snur's treasure cave, which has all kinds of stuff and all these chests that have all these problems to deal with. We lost a lot of time as a player group in amongst these chests. We finally bailed on some of these and just said whatever's in here is not worth it. But to prove the lie to that, look at what's in coffer number 1. The Ring of Contrariness was a blast, by the way. We had a lot of fun with the Ring of Contrariness. And in fact, we went on a dinner break to a Wendy's during the play of this module, and the player who had the Ring of Contrariness on him ordered his meal very contrarily throughout. I don't think the girl behind the counter found it funny, but we all did. We have a Ring of Water Elemental Command. Ring of Delusion is not very good, but a Ring of 3 Wishes is plenty good. If you played the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, you got 3 wishes there too if you played it right. That's potentially 6 wishes for this group. That's not bad for a group of 8th to 12th level players. So these are worth working their way through. They're just tough. And now we get to Lord Obmi. Obmi, oh my goodness, we've heard that name before. Yes, he's one of the main bad guys in the early Gore the Rogue books, especially Artifact of Evil and then Sea of Dust, or Sea of Death. Obmi works for Ayuz in that, and here he's a slave of King Snur, and he hates King Snur, but he's thoroughly evil. Obmi has lots of little magic items if he can get to it. Right now, he doesn't have any of his magic with him. You can encounter him, and he'll lie, he'll cheat, he'll do anything to save himself, and he will backstab the party first chance he gets. He is a fighter with 79 hit points. Obmi's a lot of fun. I've used Obmi many times in my campaign. He still exists in my campaign and pops up now and again as somebody to just vex and anger my players. So his first appearance is here. Then we go to the council room where Obmi would give advice to the king. And then we come down here to the guest chambers. And the guest chambers have 3 Rakshasas in there. Oh man, this was a challenge for me to run when I first ran this in the early 80s. Rakshasas are tough. If you read their write-up, oh my goodness, these are difficult monsters to play properly. The 3 Rakshasas ended up being about a 2-hour encounter, and it was very dangerous for the player characters. They got through it, but it was not easy. We come down here to some barracks, communal quarters with a bunch of giants and giantesses and younglings. Again, the kennel keeper's quarters where the hell hounds are kept. And now we come down to level 2, which is this guy right here. And in level 2, we have the Hall of the Dead Kings, the Atin's guards chamber. We have 4 Atins there on guard duty. You're not getting in there unseen. 4 stone giants who work the stone in this area for the king. And 5 hill giants who are working in this area. House the fellow fire giants in the community quarters chamber. 1 sergeant, 3 other males, 6 females, and 8 younglings. So then we get down, we have the smithy, torture chamber, which I really didn't use. We come down to the cells. These can be great. I use this elven female. She's set for sacrifice in the temple. She's of high noble birth. They rescued her. They got her out safely. She ended up being a very important NPC in my campaign for a few years after that, and she was a great contact among the elves. Specifically, I had her be from Selene. So the players had a nice in with the elves of Selene through her. And then the human female 11th level thief who's chained here. I've used her a little bit, but unfortunately, every time I used her, everybody caught on right away that there was something not right about her, and she was never really able to indulge much in shenanigans. So I didn't get much use out of her. The fire giant who has drawn the King Snur's ire is hanging here. He is Boldo, the fire giant's chief lieutenant, and he does anything he can. He pretends to work with the party, but he betrays them at first chance. And then a Titan. This Titan was interesting. He has been drugged. He is very out of it. But if you have a neutralized poison, you can get him back on his feet. And some healing, which the party had. They cast a neutralized poison on him, and one of the players had a scroll of heal and used it. This Titan became a big game changer for the party. He ended up going with the party toward the end of the run to exact some revenge on King Snur and his troops. And now we come down to, ready? The drow. We start running into some drow here. I don't say drows, by the way. Drow. That was just a slip. Here is where we first encounter Eclavdra. She is 10th level fighter cleric, 60 hit points, 17 wisdom, dex of 18, constitution of 10, charisma of 18, armor class -8. She's the one that's caused all the trouble. She's the force behind the giants attacking humanity. She is working with the giants, egging them on, promising them all kinds of power, as the drow will then plan on invading the surface world. It's interesting that this module alone introduces 2 of the more enduring characters of all of D&D in Obmi the Dwarf and Eclavdra. This is Eclavdra Isleserves. And be sure you let her survive. You do not want Eclavdra to get killed in this one, or if she does, have some way that she's back through some type of clone or something, because Eclavdra serves a big purpose in the world of Greyhawk after this. I absolutely love Eclavdra. I've used her many times in my campaign. She's still existent and very dangerous. One interesting thing I want to note here in the priests area where the drow are set up, there is a large pillar, and if you come over there and a tentacle will come out of the altar, or it's an altar, and grab the nearest living creature, drawing it into the stone, and wherever, then it's totally gone. The altar will return to its dead state. Atop it will be the thing which the party wished for. So basically you can get a wish, but you awaken something that snatches one of the players, drags them into the altar. They're dead, gone forever. This elder elemental god, and he gives you something in return. I think this was intended to be, this is a Cthulhu type thing. Let's face it, Thurisdan's nothing but Cthulhu. But I think this is the first real hint of Thurisdan that we get. I bet he wasn't even named then, but there was always a dark evil lurking in Gygax's games. He followed H.P. Lovecraft and, more importantly, Robert E. Howard's writings quite a bit. And Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard were writing correspondent buddies. So a lot of their work dovetails. It's very similar. A lot of sleeping elder gods that want to come into our plane. So here's our first real look at drow. We get several drow to battle in this one. They have the tentacle rods, which can paralyze a limb. They also have a viscous glob thing, which will shoot out the big ball of glue and pin you down. And then we get on to level 3. And once you get here, you're kind of exhausted anyway. But this is the entryway to the Underdark that the drow came through. So you go through here, and it's just a bunch more encounters. This is almost a little pedestrian. After being up in Snur's Hall and all the nasty stuff that you deal with, there are still drow to deal with down here. You get a lot of female drow, so the drow become the main opponents here. And this ends the expedition to Snur's Hall. Here's our first look at drow. Now, drow would also appear in the Fiend Folio in 81. So they would appear there and here. I'm not sure which date each of these was published. I'm not sure which one came first. My first exposure to drow was right here. So we get the nice look at the drow, the Crystal Brittle and Energy Drain spells that were both brought out in the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. And then the player characters, and we're out. All in all, many evenings of fun. A great adventure. There is so much fun to be had in these pages. Each of these is short, only about 8 pages long each. But hours and hours of play. I've never finished any of these halls in a night. They're all multi-level or multi-game nights and can present tremendous challenges. So the next up in the series would be going down into the descent in the depths of the earth. We're going to take our first look at what later became known as the Underdark. I'm pretty excited about that, actually. Well, that's all I have for today about the Against the Giants. I hope you liked watching all of these. I hope they kept you entertained. If you did, please like and subscribe. Please remember the Patreon. And I'll see you next time on page 121.